Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our YouTube channel. And, we're on a miraculous adventure learning about the history of the Second World War, most notably in the Pacific Theater. And joining me is none other than my good friend and your good friend as well, Daniel. Hey, Daniel, how you doing, buddy?
Hey guys, it's felt like almost literally a week since the last two episodes. I wonder if there's any truth to that. Hey guys,
Well,
welcome back.
well, at the time of this recording, I haven't seen you since last year, so it's
That's
good.
right. You're right. I completely threw that over. I should have gone, man. We're really dating when we're filming this. Hey guys, the last time I saw Kit was last year.
Yeah, so there you go. All right. So obviously now we are continuing on with this incredible series by Kings and Generals. And what I would ask everyone that's watching this channel, please support the original content creators. Please support the original content creators. It's the right thing to do, and we ask everyone to do that. It's correct. It's nice. So there you go. So
And subscribe to the channel for more episodes.
There you go. Yes, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe to Americans Learn. That way you're made aware when we upload new content onto our YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and look at today's episode, and it's titled Japanese Invasion of Malaysia, Pacific War 2 documentary. So let's go ahead and pull that up and get ready to get our learn on.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th would always be remembered as the day of infamy in which the Japanese started the Pacific War. But at the same time, the Empire of Japan also began simultaneous offensives against British, Dutch, and American possessions in...
Go ahead.
Point this out, that always is the case when we're dealing with like World War and what we classify as what. They're like, it's just when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor that the war started. That this Pacific War started, not when they invaded China,
not when they invaded Korea or Indochina.
Those are small countries. What do they matter?
Or laying siege to Hong Kong or anywhere else. Don't worry. The war started
when America says it did.
Yes, it started on this day. No, my friends. It started a little bit before.
That's what I really like about all the build-up that they did to get to this point, is that we can go, can we really say with all sincerity that it just started then? This has been happening. Millions of people have died getting to it just starting.
Yeah, so can you imagine like you're a resistance fighter in China or in Indochina or somewhere in Korea, and you find so now the war started. So that was all just a preliminary exam. Great, awesome. Yeah. All that's now the war started.
I'll tell my dead family that we're safe. The war just started.
Hey kids, the war just started. Everything's fine now. Yeah. Bye.
Remember, World War II started when Germany invaded Poland, not when Japan invaded Nanking.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, I get it. It's like at that point it's regional, and the European nations have colonies, so it's worldwide. But like,
come on.
Like it's such an attack on the millions that die. Like leading up, it's not really that legitimate until we get involved.
Exactly.
In Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Today we're going to cover some of these attacks in mainland Southeast Asia, primarily focusing on the invasion of Malaya and the British response against the Japanese aggression. Learning about the sponsor...
Now, okay, this looks delicious, and here's the thing I want to say to everyone watching this. We will not play the promo because chances are it's expired. But hey, support and subscribe to Kings and Generals, okay?
And again, these videos were reacting to our year-old, so I know from doing advertising on YouTube, the links aren't even relevant anymore.
And number two, said company may not like us.
I mean, what could they not like about us? But just to be safe.
Yes, yeah, you know. I mean,
said box company will play your ad.
Exactly.
You would love that stuff.
Are you kidding me? I would, but if anything relating to Japan, we're not selling no fake Japanese knives.
With the rise of the Japanese threat after the end of World War I, the UK had decided to establish a main naval base in Singapore during the 20s, to defend their colonial possessions in the Far East. Singapore was selected due to its strategic importance, and because it was the only British territory to be excluded from the non-fortification clause of the Washington Naval Treaty, and their intention was to have a strong fleet here to deter Japan from any act of war. But this was clearly not enough, as Japanese aggression in the region during the 30s kept rising and threatening the British colonies. The outbreak of the Second World War in Europe also limited the capability of the UK to defend this region, leaving British Malaya, Burma and Hong Kong alone in case of war with Japan. Prime Minister Winston Churchill himself believed that the Japanese wouldn't dare to attack them as early as 1941, so he chose to reinforce the Mediterranean instead. In case of attack, however, the British plan of defense consisted of delaying.
The amount of times in history a bad decision has been started with, they wouldn't dare.
Or, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Hey, my fellow Roman senators, look, this Hannibal is a very bad guy. I think we need to worry about him. Oh, nonsense. You're ridiculous.
He's in Spain. What could he possibly do?
Send a fleet to invade us or come through southern Italy? I don't think so. But what if he goes around and takes a route through the Alps? That won't happen. That'll never happen.
But this is the other thing. Even if Britain's so stretched thin at this point, their empire's falling around them. I think even if they were like fully aware, or like, what could they do? They didn't have anything. They could have maybe spent more time training troops, but they didn't have guns. I'm sure that they could spare at this point as they're fighting or trying to stop. You know, they're probably like right now arming Greece when this is happening.
Exactly.
The Japanese advance as long as possible while maintaining control over their fortress at Singapore for the arrival of reinforcements to save them, even though they actually couldn't afford to send reinforcements to the Far East, so this plan was very unrealistic. In Malaya, Commander-in-Chief Robert Brooke Popham of the British Far East Command had been assigned the defense of the region, although he knew that without reinforcements they wouldn't be able to withstand a Japanese attack. Malaysian ground forces were under the command of Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, who only had 31 inexperienced infantry battalions.
31 inexperience. Just hear that out. 31.
And how battalions? What, 1,000, 1,200 people?
Let's be correct, because after all, we're called Americans Learn.
Let me look too.
Battalion
size.
It consists of 300 to 1,200 soldiers.
So if they're in, and so my guess is they're not at full strength either. If they're not trained.
Well,
and their weapons are probably like, hey, here's the World War I stuff we don't use anymore.
So obviously, if it is 31 untrained battalions, let's be generous here. Let's say there's 1,000 in each battalion, right? So that's 31,000 troops that are inexperienced in heavy combat, and
they probably don't have modern equipment. They probably don't have a lot of heavy equipment or like a lot of artillery or ammunition for it. Mm-hmm. And they're probably not going to be that maneuverable.
And not to mention leadership too. Leadership is key, because if you're going to be in charge of 31 battalions, how many of those field grade officers are familiar with battle tactics?
And I'm sure that all these inexperienced troops are absolutely terrified of fighting the Japanese.
Yep.
Untrained to fight in jungles and rubber plantations.
Okay, again, not familiar with the terrain as well. Recipe for disaster.
And look at this. Okay, wait. Keep going. Let it blow out.
Organized into 3 divisions, and with the
okay.
So let's see. So we got Australians,
India, Singapore, and then
So it seems mostly like probably like, because India is their colony. It's like conscripts from India. Maybe I'm wrong on conscript part, but it's like it seems like the bulk of their force is India, and I don't quite remember if India had any real experience fighting modern wars at this point. I could be completely wrong and just misguessing, but literally one of their defensive units isn't a unit, it's the fortress itself.
Exactly. And then there's also, again, you got forces from Singapore. So you know what else is another thing too? Communication. Mm-hmm. How much are these forces able to properly communicate with each other?
That sounds like 3 languages to me.
Yep.
Malaysian garrisons totaled some 88,600 men.
Okay.
Air power was also key for the defense of Malaya, but the British only counted with 14 squadrons of mostly old aircraft, a small force to cover both strike and reconnaissance roles.
That's not enough.
Naval forces were old and small as well, but they...
Can you scroll back to where they actually have that full list? I really want to see what they have in stock on this. Yeah, let it play out.
British only counted with 14 squadrons of mostly old aircraft, a small force to cover both strike and
Okay. So, Buffalo fight, like this is like I was saying, that's the other thing is that Japan has like, from their point of view, cutting edge machinery, and I see biplanes, I think, in there potentially.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm trying to see what I actually recognize. None of these are even like World War II, early World War II planes that I'm familiar with. At least they're clearly, British, so I'm not as familiar with British airplanes as I am. Like, the Spitfire, Hurricane. I know all of those. I don't know. I've heard of the Buffalo. I don't know how many of these are limitless, but they very much scream to me, hey, here's the surplus World War I planes that we really don't have a use for in modern combat. You guys can have them.
Yeah, and again, too, this is a joint task force of the Royal Air Force, the Australian Royal Air Force, and the New Zealand Royal New Zealand Air Force. Sorry, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Royal Air Force, and the Royal New Zealand Air Force. So
let's see if I can really quickly just look up one of these, because I don't want to take all the time in the world.
Yeah,
pausing right here. I just want to get an idea of what if I'm talking about the right stuff.
Yeah, just take one of the fighter planes, for example.
Yeah, so the Wildebeest, the one that is in the third column in bomber squadron.
Yeah.
The Wildebeest. Yeah, those are literally biplanes.
Oh no.
So it's like this is probably the surplus World War I Air Force, and they're going to be fighting Zeros.
Oh God! In
assuming history, they get off the ground.
This is again the long, sad history of the world's most one-sided fist fights caught on film.
Yeah, it's like
reconnaissance role.
That's what I say. I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's like that. That's probably going to shoot down like 1 or 2 Zeros. I'm not sure what they're going to be able to accomplish besides getting scouting about stuff they can't do anything about. It just sounds like they're not ready at all.
Right on.
Naval forces were old and small as well, but they would be reinforced by Admiral Tom Phillips' Force Z, consisting of the battleships Prince of Wales and Repulse, along with 4 destroyers, mainly intended...
Go ahead.
That's the Bismarck, the one that fought with the Bismarck, not the one that sunk it up. It's like Bismarck sunk itself, but that was the one... Maybe
really?
Wait. I don't know the timing. Maybe this is before Bismarck.
Bismarck sunk... Well, hold on.
We're so tangent. We'll just move past it. Somebody in the comments can tell us.
Yes,
or we'll figure out. But basically, the thing defending this area is a battleship and destroyers, and they're old.
Yes, they don't have aircraft carriers
to deter any act of Japanese aggression. The British government also believed that Hong Kong couldn't be.
Go ahead.
Tojo's in Tokyo. Okay, we're ready to attack the Indies, sir. They have an old battleship. And oh crap! Cancel the invasion. We got to reassess our plans.
Defended because of the strong Japanese presence all around it, but Major General Christopher Maltby thought that he could at least delay the Japanese advance long enough to be rescued by British reinforcements, even though there were none available. He then placed 3 infantry battalions at the Gin Drinkers Line, a defensive line that stretched across the Kowloon Peninsula, intending to stop the Japanese advance in the mainland, while 3 more battalions with a volunteer corps held Hong Kong itself. On November 11, 1940, the German raider Atlantis captured the British steamer Automedon in the Indian Ocean. The ship was carrying papers meant for Air Marshal Sir Robert Brooke Popham. The information was about the weakness of the Singapore base, and in December 1940, the Germans handed this information over to the Japanese. Alongside this, the Japanese...
I think this is the second time that the German submarines have. I didn't even quite realize that they routinely captured stuff. I thought they were like they
Oh
were
yeah,
just strictly.
well the German submarines back in the day were again groundbreaking technology, and
Well,
just
yeah.
so everyone knows here too, the Bismarck did sink in the days between the 26th and 27th of May 1941. So Bismarck
So it
is
hasn't happened yet. So the Prince of Wales is probably going to go back at some point. So my guess is that we're going to hear some point the fleet's going to get recalled because maybe I'm guessing. It's just my guess based on how things I think are going to play out. But mm,
yeah.
yeah.
And by the way, what happened was it was the King George V and Rodney that was supported by cruisers that sunk it. I don't think the Prince of Wales was there.
I think it might have. Okay, it doesn't matter right
Anyways,
now.
yeah, we'll find out. We'll find
Yeah.
out.
He broke the British Army codes in January 1941, learning the details of the weakened state of the fortress of Singapore, allowing them to prepare
Right,
for
that's
an
what I was saying.
invasion.
So
Go ahead,
you know
go
how
ahead.
like the British were really good at, especially early in the war, at making double agents out of everyone and then feeding that intelligence to America. I very much feel like Germany is that to Japan because this is the second time that I was going to say the second time we've heard of a U-boat capturing stuff, and that giving intelligence for Japan.
As we've already seen, after the embargo enacted by the US, the UK, and the Dutch in July of 1941, the Japanese had decided to simultaneously invade their possessions in the east to get their hands on the rich resources they possessed. It is interesting to note that as China tied down many of their forces, the Japanese could only employ 11 divisions for these offensives, so speed was really of the essence before the Allies could reinforce this region. By late November, preparations for the attacks had already been carried out, and on December 2nd, the order to climb Mount Nitaka had been sent, setting in motion the start of the offensives. For the invasion of Malaya, the Japanese planned to do several naval landings in southern Thailand and northern Malaya, followed by an advance through the Malayan Peninsula along the western coastal plain until the final assault against Singapore across the Strait of Johor.
And it's one thing to steamroll through these forces that are ill prepared. It's another thing altogether to hold and maintain said empire. And again, look at how they're advancing. Bicycles.
Still pretty cutting edge tech at the time.
Yeah, I know.
I don't. Is horses or bicycles?
Right. And look, I just have to say, folks, I really hate that alternate history that always has, what would happen if the Axis won World War? No, they were never going to do it. And to set up a scenario, you have to set up so many hoops to where when you set up said hoop jump that you have to go through, someone's going to look at you and say, what are you doing? Are you absolutely stupid?
Yeah, this is the other thing that they said there's like 11 divisions. So that's like they have, between 100 to 150,000. It's not, to basically go, okay, we're conquering a whole region of the world with 100 to 150,000 people.
That's not how it works.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The plan developed by Suji.
Well, what I meant was to hold and maintain. I mean, it's one thing to invade, but to hold and maintain.
Hey man, look at that. We're heroes. We took down 30,000 people with biplanes.
Yay. Now how do we hold their land? I have no idea.
Masanobu was very bold, having to traverse 400 miles of jungle road against a major force that had established formidable defenses in Singapore. The 25th Army of Lieutenant General Yamashita Tomoyuki, initially consisting of 2 divisions, was appointed to execute this operation, covered by the 2nd Fleet of Admiral Condor Nobutake in its role of escorting convoys to Thailand and Malaya.
Pause that.
Go ahead.
Okay, does that look more or less than 5 ships? I think it looks like more than 5 ships.
Way more than 5 ships, man.
British might be having some issues.
Well, I mean, hey, as I like to say on this channel, what could possibly go wrong?
Landings at Thailand would be critical because the British couldn't defend this area, giving the Japanese an easy landing point to commence their advance. Thailand's dictator, Marshal Plek Phibun, had promised the Japanese to allow them safe passage for a possible invasion of Malaya. Yet at the same time, he was negotiating with the British and Americans for guarantees, which made the Japanese feel like they couldn't trust him.
So in other words, he was like Francisco Franco with Adolf and Churchill. That's what people don't realize. Like again, it was the Germans and the Italians that were helping out uh, General Franco defeat the Republic. But then afterwards, he started building up at least quiet deals with Britain and France and the Allied powers, which is why, again, many resistance fighters and cells did sneak through Spain. It's something people don't talk about too much, but just an interesting comparison.
The 15th Army of Lieutenant General Ida Sojiro, initially composed of 2 divisions, also needed to transit through Thailand, as it had been prepared for an invasion of Burma. If the Thais didn't allow the Japanese safe passage by December 7th, then this army would invade from Indochina and head straight to the Burma.
Again,
they're just like, yeah, 20,000 people. We can take Thailand with that.
I also want to add on here too. Again, the Axis powers. They were the people in the bar that like to start a fight with everyone, and then everyone just gets together and say like, "Hey, let's go jump these guys."
Well, I would even say further. They were the people that the last time the bar was really packed, everyone got a drink bought for them except them. I mean, think about it. It's like the Axis powers of World War II are all the people that felt cheated by World War I.
Yeah.
Burmese border. To counter a possible invasion of Thailand, Brooke Popham had planned for the 11th Indian Division to establish positions at Singora and Patani before the Japanese could land, although this action meant invading a neutral nation. Since Operation Matador didn't get automatic approval, the plan was essentially dead, but it would have one major consequence. The 11th would be prevented from completing defensive positions at Jitra. And at Hong Kong, the 23rd Army of Lieutenant General Sakai Takeshi, consisting of only 1 division, had the task of executing a 3-pronged attack against the gin drinkers' line, while Hong Kong Island itself was blockaded and bombarded into submission.
Again, already looking at the terrain, there's no way Britain's going to hold.
On December 4th, troop transports from Hainan Island, escorted by Admiral Kondo's fleet, started to sail en route to their objectives. 2 days later, the Japanese were spotted by British reconnaissance, but Brooke Popham wasn't authorized to take any actions yet, only putting his forces on full alert. At 2300 hours on December 7th, the Japanese presented an ultimatum to the Thai government, demanding safe passage and giving them 2 hours to respond. As Phibun couldn't be located until late morning, the Thais would be invaded some hours later. From Indochina, the Imperial Guards Division and the 55th Division invaded Phra Tabong unopposed, then continuing northwest towards Aranya Prathit. Meanwhile, a regiment of the 5th Division had landed at Patani, and the rest of the division landed at Singora, quickly taking the upper hand against the fierce Thai defenders. From Saigon, elements of the 15th Army would also execute some naval landings across Thailand, but they would face staunch Thai resistance that would prevent them from making any progress. At the same time, almost an hour before the attack on Pearl Harbor began, the 18th Division landed at Kotabaru with much effort, quickly running into beach defenses held by an Indian battalion. In response, the defenders employed their artillery and their Hudsons to bombard the Japanese positions, while the men in the pillboxes pinned down waves of enemy soldiers, thus inflicting...
Okay, that's pretty impressive for a unit and force that is not experienced, and they're holding the line. And think about it, they're dealing with seasoned veterans. They're dealing with ship commanders that are experienced in bombing locations. So already we're seeing some kind of pushback, but it won't be enough. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say also, just a reminder that amphibious landings are like one of the most difficult and casualty producing actions you could make. So literally the second they get on shore, it just becomes easier for the Japanese.
Yeah.
Heavy casualties on the invaders. After heavy combat, the Japanese finally penetrated the center of the Indian line by 0345, threatening the valuable airfield nearby. Concurrently, 17 Japanese bombers attacked Singapore, only causing minor damage to their airfields and killing 61 persons. Yet this was a shock to the British command, who didn't believe that their foe had access to long-range aircraft. Japanese fighters...
Again, that's sheer ignorance on the military commander's part. You always have to prepare for any kind of situation to where, again, the enemy could have it. To say that they didn't, or I didn't know they could do. Have you not been paying attention to what's been going on since 1939?
Hey, what are innovations? It's like, this is like America was like, Japan can't attack us in Pearl Harbor. It's too shallow. The torpedoes are going to go too low into the soil. Yeah. And here they're like, Japan having long range planes. That's not a thing that can happen.
Yeah.
And bombers also started to appear in Kota Bharu and across the main airfields of northern Malaya, causing havoc on Brooke Popham's RAF and proving their air superiority. In the ensuing confusion, 2 counterattacks by different Indian battalions were repelled at Kota Bharu, prompting the British to prematurely destroy their northern airfields to prevent them from falling into enemy hands, while at night, the defenders at last retreated from the beaches to guard Kota Bharu itself. And further west, a small Indian force, based at the town of Crow, had been earmarked to execute a mini Operation Matador, codenamed Crocol, with the objective of occupying the easily defendable ledge position on the Patani Road. While confusion reigned at the British headquarters, Operation Crocol was launched at 1500. After crossing the frontier, however, the Indians were met by staunch Thai resistance from the police based in the town of Betong. These policemen, led by Major Prayun Ratanaket, established important roadblocks that managed to delay the Indian advance for 2 whole days, while at the same time fighting the Japanese at Patani.
I just gotta say it. If local police are holding your army up,
there's something wrong. Oh no, you know what it was? Instead of a combat situation, what it was okay. The British army is just moving along the road. All of a sudden, they hear a whoop whoop, like a police siren car come right there. Officer comes out, a little smug area.
Do you have a permit for this army?
You have a permit for this? See, you got an army here. Lot of soldiers here. Where's your papers at? We don't. Yeah, tell all your forces they're sitting down here. It's probably gonna be like some arrogant, like smug cop. Like, yeah. We got a 1100. We got an illegal army here. You might want to bring out like 3 additional squad cars and some extra handcuffs. We got to bring these guys in. That's not what happened. I'm just trying to make light of a very dangerous and horrifying situation for everybody involved right now. But that would be funny if that was the case. Like a squad car just came and was like, "Hey, nice army you got there. All right, everyone, hands up. You're going to jail."
After several hours of fighting, Japan and Thailand signed an armistice by midday, with Phibun finally allowing Japan to use his country as a base of operations, although the Thais would not join the war effort for now. Unopposed, but traversing over bad roads, the Japanese at Patani would also start to advance to the ledge position that was some 60 miles away from them, starting a race with the Crocol detachment to get there first. Meanwhile at Hong Kong, 3 columns of the 38th Division commenced their attack, quickly overrunning British defences in the new territories and reaching the gin drinkers line by late afternoon. The British colony was also subjected to a heavy air bombardment and a naval blockade by Vice Admiral Nimi Masaichi's 2nd China Fleet, although 2 British destroyers managed to escape the encirclement at 21:30 to join Force Z at Singapore. But unbeknownst to them, Admiral Phillips had already sailed from Singapore after dark, intending to intercept the Japanese invasion fleet in the South China Sea. He expected to arrive at Kota Bharu on December 10th, and he relied on the surprise factor for the success of his operation. The following day started with renewed fighting at Kota Bharu. As the Japanese pressed on the disorganized defenders, they began to infiltrate around the British strongpoints, something so worrisome for the British command that on December 10th, the defenders were authorized to abandon Kota Bharu and retreat south of Machang. At 1345 on December 9th, Force Z was also discovered by Japanese submarines while they travelled north, so their destruction was now inevitable. 4 hours later, the British spotted Japanese aircraft tailing them, prompting Phillips to turn west and return to Singapore. While the British fled to the south, fate would intervene at midnight, as Force Z received erroneous reports that Kuantan was suffering naval landings. Phillips then decided to investigate this critical location, changing his course to the southwest. When he arrived at 0800, he found no sign of the enemy, so he decided to linger off Kuantan for an extra 90 minutes. This would prove fatal, as Japanese bombers and torpedo planes soon fell upon them. Several attacks were made against the British battleships by midday, with 1 bomb hit on the Repulse and 2 torpedo hits on the Prince of Wales that caused considerable damage. A new attack at 12:20 managed to hit the Repulse with 4 torpedoes, leaving it unable to maneuver and exposed to 5 more hits that caused her to list and finally sink 10 minutes later. The Prince of Wales continued to resist for the next half hour, but in the end it began to sink due to the amount of damage received. 513 men died aboard Repulse, while the Prince of Wales lost 327 sailors. The rest of their crews were rescued by the destroyers of Force Z, which managed to retreat to Singapore. The sinking of the British battleships was a heavy blow to the British Navy, but it was also a bad omen for the Malayan defenders and for the Chinese still resisting in the north. Meanwhile in Hong Kong, the Japanese commenced their attack across the Gin Drinkers Line on December 9th. At midday, Sakai's men detected a weak spot on the British line at the Xingmen Redoubt, quickly setting out to exploit it. By December 10th, the position had fallen into Japanese hands, and the remaining defenders were now exposed. The following day, a failed naval invasion on Lama Island at last forced Maltby to order his forces to withdraw back to Hong Kong Island, with the last of them crossing the Liamen Strait on the morning of December 13th. For the remainder of the week, Hong Kong would suffer a sustained bombardment, while the Japanese planned their naval invasion. If you want more details about the struggles of this campaign, don't forget to check out our video on the Battle of Hong Kong. The link is in the top right corner. By December 10th, the Crocodile...
Again, really, it's just incredible seeing just the amount of organization you're seeing on the Empire from the Empire of Japan, and comparing that to the British Empire, and well, how a lot of them were just caught off guard. I think a lot of people underestimated the fact that Japan, Germany, were rising as military powers, and I don't think anyone was prepared for the innovation and technology that would obviously see both nations expand and take a vast amount of territories.
Yeah, again, it's like they're in this position where they probably, again, it's like Britain doesn't have anyone to spare.
Yeah.
So like all the people that are like leadership track, like really good generals, like your Montgomery types, they're all in Europe. These are like hey dude, I got you a position, you do it for 2 years, then you'll get promoted, then you'll fight in the real army kind of roles, it seems. And it seems like the people that are there are just not as ready, and they don't have the tools, even if they really were.
Agreed.
Detachment had also finally reached the town of Betong, being now only 26 miles away from their objective. They then started to traverse through the Patani River towards the ledge, but were surprised by a Japanese ambush that forced them to retreat when only a mile remained. It turns out the regiment of the 5th Division won the race to the ledge, arriving there by midday on December 10th. As a result, the Indians suffered heavy casualties and were eventually repelled back to Crow by December 13th.
And then the police pulled them over again and said, "Hey, do you have a permit for that army?"
What army?
The rest of the 5th Division had advanced southwards from Singora to the Malay border, directly opposing Jitra and intending to take Alor Setar. Major General David Murray Lyon of the 11th Indian Division, who had his forces in weak defensive positions at the road junction of Jitra, was not aware that the main objective of his defense, the Alor-Sutta airfield, had already been abandoned. From the coast, the 6th Indian Brigade defended a sector 10 miles long, while the 15th Indian Brigade held the road area, and the 28th Indian Brigade was in reserve. The Indians had already sent 2 detachments to delay the Japanese advance on December 9th, but seeing the Japanese rapidly advancing, Murray Lyon placed 2 battalions north of Jitra to give the Indian defences more time to be better prepared. This covering force came into contact with Japanese tanks on the morning of December 11th and was quickly overrun after suffering heavy casualties.
Again, I have made fun of Germany and Japan for having horse-drawn carriages and bicycles. That's probably Japan, but here we're seeing mechanized units going up against infantry that have nothing at all.
They have helmets.
The loss of
You can see they got helmets there. Each of them have a helmet.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind. All right, then everything's fine.
These battalions forced Murray Lyon to bring forward his reserves, leaving Alor-Sutta lightly defended. At night, the Japanese tanks reached the main British position north of Jitra, with the rest of the 5th Division coming behind. Heavy fighting ensued between the Japanese tanks and the demoralized Indian troops, ending with the penetration of the British defences around 0600. Several Indian forces were then overrun.
Right there.
Go ahead.
Like, people always are like, the Japanese tanks weren't any good. They couldn't even take on a Sherman. This is what their tanks are meant for. Highly mobile jungle terrain where they can't be too big, and they're not really fighting anything that's that well armored.
Right on.
Prompting Murray Lyon to repeatedly request permission to withdraw. At 1930, General Percival finally approved his request, and so the Indians began to retreat to a defensive position at Gurun. Due to very poor communications and amidst great confusion, Murray Lyon's forces suffered immense casualties, but managed to break out of contact with the Japanese by December 13th. As a result, the 11th Indian Division had been shattered, the main British defences in northern Malaya had been overrun, and the Japanese advance down the Malayan Peninsula had begun. Next time, we'll cover the remaining Japanese offensives of this week, mainly directed against the Philippines and the Pacific Islands. So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series.
Okay.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack here. Let me just go ahead and remove that.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. And, this is still 1941 that we are going through. So, again, we haven't really, seen the last of the onslaught from the Empire of Japan. They're still at their peak strength. There hasn't been a major pushback, and we are far from what I feel is the turning point in the Pacific theater, and that was the Battle of Midway, where, the fleet that was responsible for destroying Pearl Harbor was defeated. But we haven't got to that action-packed adventure yet, so there you go. And, side note, I haven't seen that film Midway, but I've been told that it's a pretty good movie, so there you go.
The Midway is good.
Okay, well then, all right. Well, if people said and you said it's good, well then I'll have to check it out. So without further ado, then I want to thank everyone for joining us here at Americans Learn. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that ring bell notification. That way you're made aware when we upload new content onto our YouTube channel. But please, please, please support Kings and Generals. They have put together a very thorough list of videos in regards to covering this theater of war, the Pacific War. And I urge everyone to support their channel because it's not easy making these videos. And there's a lot of videos that we have to go through. And when I say a lot, Daniel, I think you're going to agree with me. There is a lot. So support the original channel too. All right, folks, we're out of here. Bye-bye.